For 1,000 years, the galaxy had lived in peace. The stars that once burned with war now glowed quietly, and the worlds that once feared destruction finally breathed easy. Civilizations that had fought for dominance now traded instead. They built grand cities on planets that once were battlefields and sang songs about a future where no one had to fear invasion again. Among those civilizations was one that most had forgotten: humanity. Once known across the stars as the most unpredictable and dangerous species, they had suddenly disappeared from galactic affairs. 1,000 years ago, after a long and brutal war that nearly tore the Milky Way apart, the humans withdrew. They shut down their wormholes, sealed their stargates, and vanished behind their own borders. No one dared follow. At first, the other species wondered what had happened to them. Were they rebuilding, hiding, or perhaps destroyed by their own violence? But as centuries passed, curiosity faded. The galaxy moved on. To most young races, humans became nothing more than stories, legends told to children to keep them humble. Don't provoke the Deathworlders, they were told. They once tamed fire that burned stars. But after so long, those stories lost meaning. To the new generation, humans were myths. The Xylar Dominion, a powerful empire that rose during the Long Peace, didn't believe in old myths. Their leaders were ambitious, hungry, and arrogant. Their fleet spanned hundreds of systems, and their technology was said to be the best in the galaxy. For centuries, they had lived under the peace treaty signed by their ancestors, but peace bored them. They saw it as weakness. When their scientists rediscovered the outer edges of Sol space, the home system of the vanished humans, they laughed. The old coordinates showed no active communication, no defenses, not even a response to probes. To the Dominion, it looked abandoned, forgotten, a ghost territory waiting to be claimed. The Council of the Dominion met in their great chamber, their metallic wings glimmering under cold light. The Supreme Commander stood before the others, his voice sharp and full of pride. "The humans have been gone for 1,000 years, he said. If they still exist, they are nothing now. We shall take their worlds and claim their suns. The galaxy will witness the rise of the Dominion as the true rulers of the stars." The chamber erupted in approval. War had always thrilled them. It was in their blood. The thought of conquering a legendary species only made them more eager. Fleet after fleet began to assemble. Massive dreadnoughts, carriers, and destroyers formed an armada that stretched across the void. Broadcasts were sent across the galaxy, announcing the Dominion's new campaign, the cleansing of the old empire. It was meant to sound noble, but everyone knew it meant war. At first, other empires only watched in silence. Some pitied the Dominion for their arrogance. Others were quietly curious. Could humans really have survived? Were the old tales true? The Dominion didn't care. They believed in numbers, power, and fire. When their ships reached the edges of the Sol system, everything looked silent. No transmissions, no defense signals, no patrol fleets, just darkness and empty space. The commanders laughed at the ease of it. The legends were false, one said. The humans are gone. But then, something strange happened. One of the Dominion's scout ships picked up a faint signal. It was old, almost like an echo, bouncing from planet to planet. At first they ignored it. Then it started repeating. It wasn't a distress call. It wasn't a threat. It was a song, the old human anthem. Faint and broken, carried through the void like a whisper from another time. Some of the younger officers grew uneasy. "It could be a trap," one said. The commander only laughed. 1,000 years of silence, and now they play music? Let them sing. Soon they'll be singing for us. The Dominion fleet moved deeper into human space. Their long-range scanners tried to map the system, but strange interference kept distorting the readings. Every time they adjusted frequencies, the distortion moved like something alive was watching them. Still, they pressed on. The first planet they reached was Mars. It looked abandoned, dusty, lifeless, silent. Ruins of human colonies could still be seen beneath the red storms, but no life signs appeared. The Dominion landed troops, hoping to claim it as a base. The soldiers walked among the ruins, laughing at the simplicity of old human designs. Then one of them found something buried under the sand, a metallic plate, still intact despite 1,000 years. Words were carved into it in an old Terran language. A translation drone read it aloud. It said, "If you are reading this, we are still watching." The laughter stopped. Far away, Deep in the command ship of the Dominion fleet, the Admiral dismissed the message as human bravado from centuries ago. "Let them watch," he said proudly. "They'll see how the galaxy has changed." But the moment he gave the order to move toward Earth, every screen on his bridge flickered. One by one, the ship's systems shut down. Lights dimmed. Navigation froze. The Admiral shouted for his crew, but they couldn't respond. Every communication channel went silent, except one. A single line of text appeared on every display, written in a language that hadn't been used for a millennium. "You should have stayed away." The Admiral's heart raced. "Trace it," he shouted, but his technicians couldn't. The source came from everywhere and nowhere. Then suddenly the stars around them changed. The black of space shimmered and enormous shadows appeared, shapes the Dominion ships couldn't identify. Silent, dark, and motionless at first, until their lights turned on. They weren't asteroids. They were ships, hundreds of them, sleek, black, massive, far larger than anything in the Dominion's fleet. Their design didn't match any known architecture. They looked ancient, yet terrifyingly advanced. The Dominion Admiral stared in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. "No one builds ships that size." Then a voice came through, breaking the silence, calm, deep, human. "For 1,000 years you've had peace," it said. "You could have let it last forever." The Admiral tried to respond, but the system blocked all outgoing transmissions. "You thought we were gone," the voice continued. "We were here watching, waiting, hoping the galaxy had learned." Every Dominion officer felt their breath freeze. They knew that tone. It wasn't anger. It was disappointment, cold and certain. The human voice paused, then said quietly, "You've forgotten what we are." And then the human fleet moved. The Dominion scanners couldn't even track them properly. The ships shifted through space faster than light, blinking in and out like ghosts. Weapons aimed and fired, but the shots never landed. Some disappeared mid-flight. Others were reflected back at impossible angles. The Admiral's pride turned to fear. He ordered his fleet to retreat, but the human ships had already surrounded them. And then they stopped. No shots fired. No destruction. Just silence. The human voice spoke again, now quieter, almost gentle. "Go home," it said. "Tell your galaxy what you found here." Then the human ships vanished. Sensors cleared. The void returned to normal. The Dominion fleet was left floating in perfect silence. When they finally regained control of their systems, the commander gave one last look toward the blue dot of Earth glowing in the distance. For the first time, he understood why the legends had always carried a warning. The humans weren't extinct. They hadn't disappeared. They had simply decided the galaxy wasn't ready for them anymore. And somewhere, on the surface of that blue world, someone stood beneath the sky, watching the stars flicker. They saw the Dominion fleet retreat, just as the old archives predicted they would. And in that moment, the person smiled, not out of pride or cruelty, but understanding. Because peace wasn't something humans feared. They just knew what it cost. After the Dominion fleet retreated from human space, the galaxy couldn't stop talking about what had happened. The news spread faster than light. Entire star systems repeated the same question. How could an empire that powerful be forced to retreat without a single shot fired? Everywhere, rumors began to grow. Some said the humans had returned with weapons that could bend time. Others said they had made peace with death itself. A few even claimed that the Dominion ships had never really gone to war, that it was all a dream, some kind of illusion created by human minds. But those who were there, those who saw the shadow of the human ships, knew the truth. Humanity was not gone. They were alive, watching, waiting. Inside the Dominion, fear spread like wildfire. The Supreme Commander who had ordered the invasion now faced a restless council. He tried to explain the retreat as a strategic choice, but no one believed him. The recordings from the fleet showed ships appearing out of nowhere, systems freezing, and a mysterious human voice warning them to leave. The Dominion scientists tried to analyze the data, but the results made no sense. Human technology appeared to be thousands of years ahead of anything the galaxy understood. Their energy readings were unstable, almost unreal, like their ships existed halfway between matter and light. But what truly frightened the Dominion wasn't human power. It was human silence. The humans didn't boast. They didn't send messages. They didn't demand surrender or tribute. They simply vanished back into the dark. as if the encounter had never happened. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion began to hesitate. Their fleet stayed close to home. Their leaders grew paranoid, and the stories of the old Deathworlders returned to every tavern, every academy, and every ship's hull. The rest of the galaxy watched in quiet fear. Many had never seen humans, but they had read about them. The archives told stories of a species born on a world full of fire, storms, and predators, a planet where survival was never guaranteed, a place that forged creatures not just strong but adaptable, clever, and relentless. Now that same species was awake again, but far from the galaxy's noise. Deep within the Sol system, humans lived differently. They no longer built cities that reached the clouds. They built quietly, beneath the surface, within the oceans, inside the hollowed moons. The old Earth still looked peaceful from space, covered in blue and green, but underneath its calm face was a world filled with quiet machines, powerful reactors, and minds that could move mountains with a thought. Humanity had evolved, not just in technology but in wisdom. The wars of the past had taught them what peace truly meant. Inside one of Earth's old underground stations, the Council of Sol gathered. They were not soldiers anymore. They were guardians. People of every background united by a simple purpose: to protect the silence they had earned. A holographic map floated in the center of the chamber, showing the Dominion's movements at the edge of human space. A voice broke the silence. "They will come again," said one of the council members. "They always do," another voice replied calmly. "Yes, but this time we will not run. We will remind them." Outside, across the void, human ships patrolled unseen. Each vessel was silent, cloaked not by invisibility but by control, complete harmony with space itself. They had learned to hide not from technology but from attention. The universe itself seemed to ignore them, as if humanity had found a way to slip between the folds of reality. For centuries, they had waited, watching the galaxy's empires rise and fall, hoping the cycle of war had ended. But peace, they realized, could not last forever. Meanwhile, inside the Dominion's core worlds, a storm was brewing. The younger generation, those who had never known fear, refused to believe the old stories. They wanted to prove themselves, to erase their shame. Humans are just relics, they said. Old monsters hiding behind myths. A new fleet began to form, larger than before, filled with soldiers who believed they could destroy the ghost of humanity once and for all. But this time, the humans were ready. On the dark side of the moon, hidden beneath layers of rock and steel, a massive structure began to awaken. Its systems hummed softly like a sleeping giant breathing again. Lights flickered to life one by one across its enormous surface. It wasn't a weapon. It was a memory, a reminder of who they had once been. The humans called it the Archive of Earth. It held the records of every victory, every mistake, every sacrifice. And within those records, something powerful was stored. The history of how humanity had survived extinction. How they had outlasted everything the universe threw at them. A young technician watched as the data streams activated. "They're coming again," she whispered. An older voice behind her replied softly, "Then let them come. The stars forget, but Earth remembers." Days later, as the Dominion's new fleet reached the outer Sol border, they sent a transmission. "We demand your surrender," the message said. "Your silence ends today." The humans didn't respond. Instead, a single light appeared in space, a tiny flare, bright and golden. The Dominion commanders thought it was a distress signal, but then the light grew larger, expanding like a sun being born. When their sensors recalibrated, they realized what they were seeing. It wasn't a flare. It was a ship unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal. Its structure shifted slightly as though alive. It moved without thrusters, without sound, just drifting smoothly into position in front of the entire Dominion fleet. Then, for the first time in centuries, a human voice spoke directly across open channels. "You came seeking war," it said quietly, "but you found a mirror instead." The Dominion fleet fired everything they had: lasers, plasma cannons, antimatter shells. The void erupted with light. But when the glow faded, the human ship was still there, untouched, and from its surface beams of soft light spread, not to destroy, but to show. The Dominion screens filled with images of Earth, of cities rebuilt after disasters, of people standing together through centuries of storms, of children playing under skies they had fought to keep clean. The voice spoke again, calm and steady. You think power means destruction? We learned long ago it means restraint. For the first time, the Dominion soldiers hesitated. They saw not monsters but survivors, not destroyers but protectors, yet their leaders didn't stop. They shouted orders, demanding another attack, and that was when humanity truly revealed its strength. One by one, the Dominion ships froze. Not from weapons, but from control. Their own systems shut down. The human ship hadn't fired a single shot. It had simply taken control of everything around it. A single line of text appeared again across every Dominion display. Peace was our gift. Do not make us take it back. Then, as before, the human fleet vanished. The stars returned to silence. When the Dominion soldiers finally made it home, they could not explain what they had seen. Some called it mercy, others called it a warning. But all of them agreed on one thing: humans were not to be touched. In the following months, whispers filled the galaxy again. But this time the stories were different. No one called humans extinct anymore. No one mocked their silence. Instead, they spoke of a quiet species that had once ruled the stars, not through fear but through patience. Back on Earth, the Council watched the reports in silence. One of them smiled faintly. Maybe now, he said softly, they'll finally understand. Outside, the night sky glowed with familiar stars. The world was peaceful again. But beneath that peace, deep inside every human heart, there was the same quiet promise that had guided them for centuries. If the galaxy ever forgot again, humanity would remind them. Because humans didn't smile out of arrogance. They smiled because they remembered. They had fought, suffered, learned, and changed. And after 1,000 years of peace, when the universe once again reached for war, humanity didn't tremble. They just smirked. The stars looked calm again. The Dominion fleets had pulled back, broken and confused, their once loud war machines now drifting quietly in their own space. No one dared cross into human territory again. For a while, the galaxy held its breath, afraid to even whisper the word war. But deep inside the Dominion, not everyone accepted what had happened. Pride and fear mixed together, twisting into something darker. Some believed the humans had humiliated them. Others said it was a test, that maybe the humans wanted them to return stronger. And then there were those who refused to believe any of it at all. They said the recordings were fake, that the humans didn't exist, that it was all some illusion created by their own leaders to keep them obedient. Whispers turned into anger. In a hidden chamber on a Dominion world, a group of high officers gathered around a dim blue light. Their faces were tired, filled with frustration and shame. The council has grown weak, one said. They fear ghosts instead of facing them. Another nodded. If humans can control our ships, we must learn how. Their power can be ours. That single thought spread like a spark through dry grass. Soon, across the Dominion, secret research began. Projects designed to understand human technology, to copy it, to find the source of their strength. They called it the Shadow Project. Their goal was simple: break into human systems and uncover what humanity had become. Meanwhile, far from those plotting minds, Earth slept beneath its stars. Life on the surface was calm. Children studied under artificial skies. People farmed the oceans, and families gathered near warm lights as if nothing had changed. Humanity had built a paradise out of scars. But beneath that peace, deep inside the silent networks of the planet, humans were already aware of what was coming. They had seen the signs, the unusual transmissions near the borders, the shifting energy patterns, the stolen probes. Humanity didn't need spies. Their systems could sense intent like a heartbeat. In one of the old underground command stations, faint lights glowed in the dark. Screens showed the Dominion's secret research even before the Dominion itself realized it had been exposed. A quiet voice broke the silence. They're trying again. Another voice answered, let them. They always learn the hard way. The humans didn't prepare for battle. They didn't send fleets or warnings. Instead, they simply watched. For months, the Dominion continued its experiments. Their scientists tried to recreate human energy readings. At first, nothing happened. Then one day, one of their tests succeeded. Partially, a lab deep inside the Dominion capital suddenly lit up with blinding light. For a few seconds, they saw something that wasn't supposed to exist. A gateway. It flickered open like a doorway made of glass and lightning, showing a glimpse of somewhere else, a city of gold and shadow, vast and quiet, filled with machines that moved like thought. Then it vanished. Every system in the lab melted. The researchers barely survived. But the data they recorded in those few seconds changed everything. The Dominion's emperor ordered immediate expansion of the Shadow Project. If humans have found a way beyond space, he declared, then so will we. The galaxy belongs to those who dare. And so they dared. They built larger gates, stronger machines. They tore at the fabric of space, trying to reach the same realm the humans had touched. They didn't understand that what they were doing wasn't science, it was trespassing. Back in the Sol system, humanity felt the disturbance instantly. Across their hidden networks, alarms shimmered silently. The council met again, this time with heavier hearts. They've opened the rift, one said. Another shook their head slowly. They think it's a doorway. They don't realize it's a warning. Because the truth was something only humans knew. The place the Dominion had touched wasn't another part of the galaxy. It was the edge, a space humans had built long ago to contain the energies that could destroy entire systems. It was where they stored everything too dangerous to exist. Weapons, memories, and mistakes. The Dominion had just touched a cage, and they didn't even know what they were about to release. Humanity didn't wait. The hidden shipyards on the far side of Neptune came alive again. The great forges that had slept for centuries began to burn. Silent drones moved between structures, assembling something vast and ancient. A fleet not for war, but for protection. They called it the Aegis Line. Each ship was built with one purpose, to seal what the Dominion had opened. Meanwhile, in the Dominion capital, strange things began to happen. Lights flickered, data vanished, and shadows seemed to move where no life existed. At first, they thought it was sabotage. But soon their scientists realized something terrifying. The energy from the rift wasn't just leaking out. It was alive. It started with whispers in their minds, faint at first, like memories that didn't belong to them. Then came visions, burning skies, broken worlds, and voices speaking in ancient human languages. The Dominion had touched the human memory vault, and now it was touching them back. Panic spread. The council demanded answers, but there were none. Their technology began to fail. Ships malfunctioned, and entire cities went dark. In the middle of all that chaos, a single transmission appeared on every screen in the Dominion's capital. No one knew how it got there. A human face appeared, calm, old, and silent. "You've opened what we buried," the voice said softly, "and now it wakes." The image vanished. The Dominion leaders finally understood they hadn't just provoked humanity. They had disturbed something humans themselves feared. Across the stars, humanity moved quickly. The Aegis Line spread out near the rift, surrounding it like a shining wall. Thousands of human ships floated silently, their lights glowing soft and golden. There was no sound, no communication, just the calm readiness of a species that had seen this before. From Earth, a message was sent to the Dominion. Simple, direct, and final. "We are not your enemies, but what you have unleashed will not stop at your borders. Stay where you are. Let us fix what you broke." But pride never dies easily. The Dominion, even in fear, refused to listen. They sent fleets toward the rift, believing they could control it. They wanted to show the galaxy that humans were not gods, that they too could hold power. They never reached it. As their ships entered the rift zone, space itself changed. The stars stretched and twisted. Time folded. And then, silence. When their sensors returned, every ship was gone. No explosion. No wreckage. Nothing. Only the humans remained. For 3 days and nights, light flickered across the human ships as they worked to close the rift. When it finally sealed, the galaxy saw something beautiful. A golden wave of light spreading across the stars, soft and peaceful, like a sunrise that touched every world. Then it was done. The rift closed forever. In the Dominion, those who survived the chaos were humbled. Their emperor stepped down, and the people demanded peace. They had seen what arrogance could bring, and somewhere deep within the Sol system, in the quiet blue glow of Earth's oceans, the human council gathered once more. "They'll stay quiet now," one said. "For a while," another replied with a faint smile. "Until someone else forgets." The stars outside shone gently. Humanity didn't celebrate. They didn't claim victory. They simply went back to their work, rebuilding what was damaged, protecting what still mattered, because to them, peace wasn't just the absence of war, it was the strength to hold back even when you could destroy. And though the galaxy never truly understood them, every being who looked toward the Sol system that night felt the same quiet realization. Humans weren't gods. They were guardians. The kind that smiled, not because they were proud, but because they remembered exactly how fragile everything could be. And so, after 1,000 years of peace after the Second War that never truly began, the stars settled once more into calm. Somewhere in the quiet, beneath the endless black, a voice whispered from the old archives of Earth, soft, steady, and full of warmth. We told you once, and we'll say it again. We are not the strongest because we fight. We are the strongest because we know when not to. And far beyond the stars, even those who feared humanity began to understand. Peace had returned, but now, it had a guardian. The humans had spoken without anger, acted without hate, and defended without conquest, and that was why, when the next dawn rose over Earth's blue horizon, humanity smiled again. Not a cruel smile, not a victorious one, just the quiet smirk of a species that had once faced the worst of the universe, and learned how to hold it in their hands without letting it break. For many years after the rift was sealed, the galaxy stayed quiet. No one dared to start another war. The memory of what the humans did, the light that spread across the stars, had left a mark on every mind. People spoke of it in whispers, afraid that even saying too much might awaken something again. But time changes everything. As decades passed, the fear began to fade. New generations were born, and they had never seen the rift or the golden light. To them, the stories of humans sounded like myths again. They couldn't believe that a species could have so much power and still choose silence. In the far edges of the galaxy, small factions began to test the boundaries. They sent small fleets close to Sol space just to see what would happen. Every time they vanished. No signals, no wreckage, nothing. The rest of the galaxy learned quickly. Humans didn't need to fight anymore. Their silence was enough. But deep within the Sol system, things were changing again. Humanity had continued to evolve, not through war, but through understanding. They had built cities that floated in the upper layers of gas giants, research stations near black holes, and colonies that could survive without sunlight. They had learned to live with the universe, not against it. Yet among them, there were those who still remembered the wars, the elders who had seen the Dominion fleets, who had heard the voice that said, "You've forgotten what we are." These elders carried a quiet burden. They knew peace was not permanent. It never had been. One evening, far above Earth, in a station orbiting the moon, the council gathered again. The room was dim, lit only by the soft blue glow of Earth below. For a long time, no one spoke. Then one of the council members finally broke the silence. "There are new signals near the border," they said. Another frowned. "From the Dominion?" "No, something else, unidentified, old frequencies, older than the Accord itself." The room grew tense. Humanity had learned to recognize every known signal across the galaxy, but these readings didn't match anything. It was like hearing a voice from before recorded history. The council ordered quiet observation. No contact, no aggression, just watch. Weeks passed and the signals grew stronger. They came from beyond known space, past the edge of mapped stars, from a region humans had once called the Void. It was a place even their most advanced probes had never reached. Until now, a single human exploration ship, small and unarmed, was sent to investigate. Its crew didn't go for war. They went out of curiosity. The same curiosity that had driven humans to cross oceans and reach the moon centuries ago. As they traveled deeper into the unknown, strange things began to happen. Instruments flickered. Time readings shifted slightly. It felt as though space itself was bending, like something massive but unseen was moving just beyond sight. Then, on the 7th day, they found it. A structure floating in the dark. Massive, ancient and silent. It wasn't a planet or a ship. It looked like a piece of a star, frozen in mid-collapse, surrounded by glowing fragments that moved slowly like drifting ice. When the human crew approached, their sensors picked up faint energy signatures. Someone or something had been here before. They sent a probe closer, and that's when the signal changed. The static turned into a pattern, then into words. "Not human. Not any known language, but when translated it said, "You are not the first." The crew froze. The transmission repeated again and again, "You are not the first." They recorded everything and turned back toward home. But as they left the void, their navigation failed. The stars outside the window started shifting, then disappeared completely. For a few terrifying minutes, there was nothing. No light. No sound, no motion. And then, just as suddenly, it ended. When they regained control, they were already near the edge of Sol space. The ship returned safely, but the crew had changed. They couldn't describe what they had seen during those lost minutes. One of them said softly, "It was like looking into a mirror that looked back." The recordings they brought home were analyzed by every system on Earth, Mars, and Luna. The data didn't make sense. The structure they found was made of matter that didn't exist anywhere else. The energy patterns looked human, almost identical to the ones used in ancient human technology, but older. Much older. Too old to belong to this civilization. It was as if someone or something had built it long before humans were supposed to exist. The discovery shook the Council. If true, it meant humanity's story wasn't just about Earth. It meant they had roots that reached deeper into the stars than anyone had ever believed. The Council kept the information secret. Only a handful of people knew. They didn't want the galaxy to panic again, but secrets never stay hidden for long. The Dominion's new sensors eventually detected the same energy readings. They followed the trail and found fragments of human transmissions. Within weeks, rumors spread across every major world. The galaxy began to whisper again, this time not in fear but in awe. Did humans find something older than the galaxy itself? Are they connected to the first builders? Is that why they disappeared for centuries? The questions grew, and so did the curiosity. Many believed that if humans had found something that old, it might explain their mysterious power, their ability to manipulate space, their unmatched understanding of energy, their silence. Some saw it as an opportunity, a small alliance of alien species, desperate to break the balance of power, decided to find the truth for themselves. They gathered ships, scientists, and mercenaries, all claiming they only wanted to explore. But deep down, everyone knew what they were after: human secrets. When their fleet entered the void, human observers detected it immediately. But this time they didn't intervene. The Council chose to stay silent. "Let them see," one member said. "Maybe they'll understand what we found." Days passed. No news came from the Alliance fleet. Then suddenly one ship emerged from the void, damaged, silent, its lights flickering. When human drones recovered it, there was no one left aboard. Only one message remained in the ship's black box. It said, "We saw the builders. They were human." The message sent shockwaves across the galaxy. If true, it meant that humans were not just recent arrivals in the galactic timeline. They were ancient. Possibly the first, but humanity said nothing. They didn't confirm or deny. They simply continued living as they always had, quiet and watchful. On Earth, the Council met once more. They reviewed the recordings from the exploration crew and the recovered alien ship. What they saw made them uneasy. The structure in the void had changed. It wasn't dormant anymore. The fragments that once drifted slowly were now moving together, forming something larger, something awake. A voice from the recordings whispered faintly, "The cycle begins again." The Council stared at the data in silence. One of them finally spoke. "If the builders were truly human, then maybe this is our fault," another replied softly. "Or maybe it's our responsibility." Outside, the stars looked peaceful as ever, but everyone in that room knew the truth. Something old was moving in the dark again. Humanity had always been the watcher, the silent guardian. But now, something older than memory was watching them back, and for the first time in 1,000 years. The humans didn't smirk. They prepared, quietly, carefully, without panic, because they knew whatever was coming wasn't war, it was history waking up. And only humanity remembered how it ended the first time. When the recordings ended that night, the Council members sat in complete silence. No one wanted to admit it, but everyone in that room felt the same chill inside. The images from the void, the shifting lights, the whispering patterns, they didn't feel alien. They felt familiar, as if they belonged to something deeply connected to humanity's own past. Outside the window, Earth hung in the distance like a blue pearl, calm and innocent. Yet beneath its calm surface, humanity was preparing again, quietly without noise or chaos. The great cities on Mars began building new energy cores. The colonies on the Moon strengthened their defenses not with weapons, but with shields capable of bending reality. But what frightened them most was not the thought of another war. It was the feeling that something was awakening that wasn't supposed to. Something that had slept for millions of years. The elders called it the Echo. They believed it was the last memory of the first builders, the beings who had shaped the stars before recorded time. Some even whispered that humanity was their last creation, their legacy. The younger generation, however, didn't care about ancient myths. They had grown up in a time of peace. They believed in logic, in science, in evidence. They didn't want to believe that humans were tied to something so old and dangerous. But belief didn't matter anymore. Evidence had already arrived. One day, a strange pulse moved through the entire galaxy. Every star flickered for a moment like they had blinked. Communication grids across thousands of systems went dark for a few seconds. Then came the message. It wasn't a voice. It was more like a vibration that entered the mind. It carried no words, only a feeling, a mix of sorrow and warning. Those who felt it described it the same way. Something has been unlocked. The council called an emergency meeting. Their faces were pale, their voices low. For the first time in centuries, they looked uncertain. What if it's not coming for us? One of them asked. What if it's us that called it? No one answered. Across the galaxy, other civilizations began to react. The Dominion rebuilt their fleets. The Krith started constructing massive barriers around their systems. Even the peaceful Turl sent diplomats toward Earth begging for answers. Humanity remained calm. They didn't respond with threats or fear. They simply said, "Stay where you are. Do not go near the void." But curiosity is a powerful thing. One ambitious alien fleet, driven by pride and disbelief, ignored the warning. They sent thousands of ships into the void, hoping to claim whatever power lay within it. For days they broadcast their progress proudly, until suddenly the transmission stopped. A week later, fragments of their ships drifted out of the darkness. The material looked as if it had been twisted by invisible hands. There were no signs of battle, no burns, no explosions, no debris trails. Just silence. That was when fear returned to the galaxy. In a quiet observation post near Jupiter, a small group of human scientists continued studying the patterns from the void. Every day the readings became stronger, more organized. It wasn't random energy anymore. It was forming shapes like blueprints of something that was rebuilding itself. Then one of the scientists noticed something strange. The patterns matched the structure of the human DNA code. Not perfectly, but close enough to make everyone stop breathing for a moment. It was as if whatever was awakening was connected to them, part of them. News of this discovery reached the council. The decision that followed was not easy. They decided to send a team. Not soldiers, not machines, but humans. Real people. The goal wasn't to fight, but to understand. The team prepared in silence. No fame, no announcement, no press. Just a small ship carrying a few brave explorers, heading into the same dark region where so many had vanished. The journey was quiet at first. Then as they crossed into the void, space began to twist again. Time slowed, and the stars outside started to blur. The ship's systems glitched, but they kept moving forward. Suddenly, everything stopped. No movement, no stars, no sound. And then before them appeared the same ancient structure, but this time it wasn't asleep. It was alive. Thousands of golden streams of light moved through it like veins carrying energy. As the humans watched, the structure slowly opened, revealing something inside, a massive core glowing softly, beating like a heart. The moment they saw it, every human on the ship felt something deep inside their minds, a memory that wasn't theirs. They saw flashes of another time when the galaxy was new and the first builders walked among the stars. They saw them shaping worlds, creating life, spreading energy across the universe. And among those builders they saw faces, human faces. It wasn't a war they had discovered. It was a legacy. The first builders hadn't disappeared. They had transformed. They had passed down their knowledge, their essence, into a new form of life. Humans. Earth wasn't their beginning. It was their restart, but something had gone wrong. A long time ago, when the builders tried to harness the power of creation itself, they caused a rift. a wound in reality. That rift had almost destroyed everything, so they sealed it, and before they vanished, they encoded their memories into the DNA of their final creation: humans. The explorers could barely process what they were seeing. The glowing core pulsed faster, reacting to their presence. One of them whispered, "It recognizes us." And then the voice returned. This time it wasn't words. It was a feeling, a message written directly into their minds: "You have come full circle. The builder's time is over. The new age begins." The structure began to shift again, breaking apart into smaller fragments that started orbiting the ship. The light surrounded them, gentle but powerful. The systems on board recorded everything, but the humans didn't move. They just watched silently as the structure slowly faded into the stars. When they finally returned home, they were no longer the same. Their minds carried images, memories, and understanding beyond normal comprehension. They didn't speak for days, unable to put what they had seen into words. When they finally did, they told the council everything. The silence that followed was heavy. For a long moment, no one knew what to do. Then one of the elders said quietly, "So we were never just survivors. We were the continuation." Another replied, "Yes, but if the builder's power is waking again, then maybe we are its guardians now." And so began the next phase of human existence, not as warriors, not as conquerors, but as protectors of something much greater. Across the galaxy, people noticed the change. Humans started sharing technology freely again, helping weaker civilizations rebuild and expand. Their tone was calmer, wiser, as if they carried the weight of something ancient. But deep inside their hidden archives, the council stored the recordings from the void, the proof of their true origins. They didn't release them, not yet. The universe wasn't ready. However, one thing was clear: humanity's silence was not fear. It was understanding. They knew that what was coming wasn't another war. It was the beginning of something beyond comprehension. A reunion of the past and the future, and when the galaxy looked up and wondered who the humans truly were, they simply smiled. Not with arrogance, but with quiet recognition. They had finally remembered what they were meant to be: guardians of creation. The echoes of the builders now lived within them. And as the stars burned brighter across the galaxy, one truth became clear. Peace was never the end, it was the preparation. The humans had waited 1,000 years for this moment. And now, the universe was finally catching up. The moment the alien forces realized what they were up against, everything changed. They had come prepared for a long, brutal war. They thought Earth would panic, scramble to defend itself, or even beg for help from other cosmic powers. But instead, humans stood calm, almost amused, as if they had already known this moment would come for a long time. At first, the aliens tried to launch their strongest attacks. Huge fleets moved toward Earth, sending waves of energy and powerful weapons. But the humans didn't fight back in the way the aliens expected. Instead of rushing to battle, the humans activated hidden defenses, shields that seemed invisible but were stronger than anything the aliens had seen. These shields didn't just block attacks. They absorbed the energy and used it to strengthen Earth's own systems. The alien commanders were shocked. They had assumed their advanced weapons would destroy the human world quickly. Instead, their attacks bounced off the invisible walls, wasting their power and patience. On Earth, people watched the events unfold with calm confidence. Scientists, engineers, and leaders had spent decades preparing quietly for this day. They had built secret systems, trained teams, and developed plans that no one outside Earth had known about. What surprised the aliens even more was the way humans fought back, not with brute force, but with smart moves. Instead of trying to destroy the enemy fleet head-on, human forces used clever tricks. Small ships would sneak close to alien ships, not to fight directly, but to confuse their systems and disrupt their signals. It was like a game of chess, where every move was carefully planned to make the enemy weaker without risking too much. One of the most powerful weapons humans had wasn't a laser or a missile, it was their knowledge. Humans had spent years listening to alien communications and learning their languages and codes. They used this information to send false messages, causing confusion among the alien commanders. Orders would get mixed up, ships would move in the wrong directions, and trust among the alien forces began to break down. Meanwhile, on Earth, people stayed united. There were no arguments or fights about what to do. Everyone, from scientists working in labs to pilots in space, knew they were part of something bigger. Families gathered to watch the news, but instead of fear, they felt pride. The older generations remembered stories of wars long ago and how humans had learned from those mistakes. They believed that even in the hardest times, people could come together and find a way forward. The aliens, growing weaker and more disorganized, started to see that this war was not what they expected. They had planned to conquer a frightened planet, but instead they faced a world full of calm, smart, and prepared people. Slowly, the alien leaders began to talk about ending the fight before it became worse for everyone. A message came from the alien commanders, asking to open peace talks. This shocked many on Earth. Some thought the war would last for years. But the humans welcomed the chance to end the conflict quickly. The peace talks were held in space on a neutral station where representatives from both sides could meet safely. In those talks, humans didn't just demand that the aliens stop fighting. They explained why they had prepared so well and why peace was so important. They spoke about the long history of Earth, the struggles they had overcome, and the hope they carried for the future. The aliens listened carefully, realizing that humans were not just strong fighters but also wise and thoughtful beings. The aliens agreed to end the war and promised not to attack Earth again. They also asked to join the peaceful alliance that humans had helped build. It was a new beginning, not just for Earth but for the entire galaxy. The humans had shown that true strength came from unity, preparation, and a willingness to protect peace, not just through weapons but through understanding and cooperation. After the peace agreement, Earth became a symbol of hope. Other planets and civilizations looked at what humans had done and learned that sometimes the greatest power lies in patience and cleverness, not violence. People on Earth returned to their lives, but they never forgot the lessons of the war. They kept working together, always ready to face challenges with the same calm and confidence. In the years that followed, the story of how humans smirked in the face of war and turned it into peace became a legend told to children. It reminded everyone that no matter how dark things might seem, hope and courage could shine through. And so humanity continued to explore the stars not as conquerors but as guardians of peace, always watching, always prepared, but never eager for war.